Today we're going to go through this silk Spectre inspired hairstyle which involves bumper bangs, victory rolls and a reverse Gibson roll. Along with these vintage styling essentials, we'll also be listing the specific products used within this video in the right hand corner. To begin this hairstyle, I'm going to first section off the portion of the hair that we're going to do our bumper bang in. You can see I'm taking from eyebrow peak to eyebrow peak, and then it's just a semicircle towards the top of the crown and the top of the head. So first of all, we're going to back comb this section of the hair. It's going to be a fairly heavy back comb because we want plenty of hair, plenty of volume, and then we also want to make it really moldable so we can style into that nice rounded bumper bang. So you can see I'm using a rat tail comb, I'm using a fine tooth comb and just back combing through each of these sections. I'm taking about ½ inch section wide portions of hair at a time, and then you can see I'm using my thin tooth comb to pull the hair down on top of itself so it creates a really heavy secure back comb. And now I'm using a grooming brush just to smooth that top section of the hair over so that it's really nice and smooth and we don't see any of that back combing coming through. So you want to make sure you smooth all of the hair that's going to be on show, so obviously that's the top layer, and then make sure it's smooth on the outside kind of edges as well, because obviously that's where the roll is going to happen and we want that to be nice and defined and not scruffy or backcomby coming through. You can see also whilst I'm smoothing that top of the hair down, I've got my other hand just underneath that section, so I'm always brushing around my hand and just encouraging that rounded shape at all times and making sure we don't lose any of that volume that we want to gain with the bumper bang. So again, just take your time, make sure everything's smooth before we even start rolling to make sure it's a nice, smooth, defined roll. So now you can see I'm going to begin by wrapping the length of hair around my 2 fingers, creating a barrel roll that's completely see-through during the middle. And then I'm just going to roll that up in towards the forehead and just place that just really in front of the parting of your forehead so that it's got something for the hair grips to actually grip into. I'm going right inside this barrel roll now and just clipping on the very inside, so it's like the middle section where the nose kind of comes up. The middle section of the head I'm pinning into just to secure the base of this barrel roll. So once the initial shape is pinned in place and nice and secure, then we can start working on the actual rolled up kind of shape that we'll create. So you can see I'm really gently separating out that bumper bang that we've already made. And then what I'm going to do is just take a hair clip and pin the back section of the bumper bang so that it creates the kind of initial curve, and then we can start to bring that edges up so it peaks into this kind of U shape. But by pinning in place this kind of top bit of the bumper bang, it just means we have a little bit more of a kind of base and structure for us to begin that kind of curved angle of the bumper bang. And then what we're going to do is start to sculpt that U bend shape nicely around. So you can see I'm scooping the edges up, separating out the hair just really gently as I sculpt the actual shape, and then I'm going to start pinning this kind of U in shape. You can see the way my thumb is bringing that bumper bang upwards, and then you can hold that in place nicely whilst you go in with the hair grip. One of the trickiest aspects of doing a bumper bang is making sure it's nicely voluminous, and then also making sure it's even on both sides. So you do really want to take your time with this one and just really gently sculpt and move from side to side, sculpting as you work through and as you clip through. That way you just ensure that it's nice and even on both sides and it's mirroring itself really nicely. So once you're happy with your shape, keep hairspraying it to set it nicely in place. And I like to use my fingers as well to really smooth down those flyaways, because I find the heat in my fingers kind of works really nicely with the hairspray just to smooth everything in place. So now I'm going to work on the victory rolls either side of this bumper bang. So I've partitioned from the top of the crown to just behind the ear, and then I'm just clipping the remaining hair out of the way so that we have just that hair to work with. So I'm going to start by back combing through to the top section and work through that whole section of hair. I'm using my fine tooth comb, and then I'm spraying that back combing in place with hairspray as I work through the layers. What you can also do whilst you're back combing is you can bring those sections together so that it molds nicely together. You don't get that separation between the back combing, so it's just that section of hair is just one combined piece that you can mold into your victory roll. So as you can see, I'm working through each of those layers, spraying in place as I go. And what I'm going to do with the last layer is back comb on the inside of that hair so that we don't see any of that back combing coming through, and it keeps the outer edges nice and smooth so we have a beautiful smooth hairdo. So once again, I'm going to take a little bit of time just to smooth through that section of the hair using my grooming brush. And then just make sure you don't mess with the bumper bang too much that we've already done. So yeah, just take a little bit of time, smooth through, hairspray that section of hair, just to make sure it's nice and molded together so that we don't have any flyaways. So what I've done is just pop a little spray on top of the hair, mold it through with my fingers to bring that all together. And then I'm wrapping the length of the hair around my two fingers, and then bringing my other finger on the inside of that roll to tuck the ends in. And then I'm going to start rolling that in towards the head and placing just kind of behind the bumper bang, because we want to kind of bring those two sections together so that it doesn't look too separated. And then I'm going to pin in place with a hair grip. So as you can see, I'm again taking that little bit of extra time to smooth all of that hair down. Again, I like to use hairspray and just my fingers to really shape that hair and keep all those flyaways all stuck together so it's nice and neat and tidy. So now I'm going to repeat the process on the other side of the head. I've sectioned from the top of the crown to just behind the ear, and then I'm going to go in with my back combing. You can see again I'm using my fine tooth comb and just bringing that hair down the shaft of the hair. So it's a very light back combing, but it doesn't hack into the hair very much. We're basically keeping a fairly tight grip on the hair and just bringing that brush down the hair shaft and just building that back combing layer by layer. And you can see again I'm bringing those sections together as I back comb so that it's a nice uniform big section of moldable hair that doesn't have any separations or gaps between the back combing. So I'm taking about inch section wide pieces of hair at a time, and then again you can see on the last section of hair I'm going to back comb on the underside so we don't see that back combing coming through, as that portion of hair actually comes up and over and is visible with the victory roll. Again, I'm taking my grooming brush and just smoothing through that entire outer portion of the back comb section that we've already done so that our victory roll is really nice and smooth in a 360 kind of viewpoint. So before I start to roll, I always spray with hairspray and just work that through using a brush and fingers so that it's a really nice concise section of hair before we roll. And then I'm going to wrap the length of the hair around my two fingers, rolling all of that hair around, and then I'm going to put my other finger through that roll so it brings the edges inside and tucks everything in really nice and neatly. And then I'm just going to kind of pass the hair from, I suppose, pincer to pincer as I roll into the head, and then grip in place with a hair grip. And then you want to make sure these two rolls are nice and even on both sides so it's a really symmetrical kind of hairdo, because obviously having two victory rolls coming into this bumper bang, it needs to look symmetrical for it to kind of look like a really beautiful hairdo. Now that we've done the front of the hair, we're going to start working on the back. So the back of this hair is kind of a reverse Gibson roll. So what we're going to do is bring the hair up and underneath and roll it, so it's kind of like an underneath barrel roll really, which goes from ear to ear and kind of curves in up towards the ears on either side. So for my sectioning, I'm going to take a couple of inches wide portions on both sides of the head behind the ears, and then I'm going to section this back portion of the hair into 3. By sectioning off the hair, it just makes it easier to roll piece by piece rather than trying to take the entire length of that back of the hair and roll it as one piece. I'm going to separate it up and kind of tackle it individually and then build the hairdo from there. So I'm going to start my first roll at the centre of the head. I've sprayed with hairspray to take care of those flyaways. Now I'm wrapping it around my fingers and tucking the ends in by placing my finger inside that roll. So then I'm going to bring that to the base of the head, and then I'm just cupping that in place with my hand so that the shape isn't damaged or anything. It's keeping that nice rounded shape, and then I'm taking my hair grips and just pinning in place either side of the roll so it's nice and secure. Once you're happy with that roll size and placement, you can spray in place with hairspray and just take care of any flyaways as we work through each of the barrel rolls. Now I'm going to work on the 2 sections of hair either side of this central barrel roll. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, spray that piece of hair with hairspray so it's nice and mouldable and takes care of any flyaways, and then I'm going to smooth it down with my grooming brush before I roll. And I'm going to take that length of hair, wrap it around my 2 fingers, and then with the other finger I'm going to place that inside that roll that we've already made to tuck those ends in nicely, and then just gather that towards the base of the neck and then pin in place using hair grips. What you also want to be aware of at this point is to keep the structure of the rolls really similar on either side, so that when it's all pinned in, it can all graduate and look like you've done one roll nicely together. So as you can see, I'm kind of separating the hair from either roll and kind of bringing that on top of the one we've just done to kind of uniform those rolls. And then you can also see I've kind of brought the curve up a little bit, so it's starting to curve in towards to just behind the ear, so that it's nicely curved round and upwards, and it creates a nice uniform shape at the back. So now I'm going to repeat this process on the other side of that central roll that we've already done, making sure that I keep everything nice and smooth and I keep all of the rolls nice and uniform so that we can bring it all together so it's a lovely even roll coming up from the nape of the neck up, pointing towards the back of each ear. So you can see I'm kind of graduating that line on this side so that it starts to bring up and point up towards the ear. For extra security and to really bring those 2 sections together, what you can do is kind of bring a layer of each side of the roll over each other, kind of crisp them over, and then just pop a little pin, split your hair grip and then pop that in between those 2 rolls, and that will really secure that section in place. So now I'm going to start on the roll that goes in towards behind the ear. So as you can see, I've done a little bit of back combing, so it's a little bit more mouldable as we're going to sculpt this section of the roll a little bit more than the others. So I'm bringing that, graduating it up from the roll that we've already done in behind the ear. And then again, I'm scooping that with my hands so that we don't mess with the structure of the roll, holding that in place, and I'm going to secure that in place for now with a long pin curl clip, just as I kind of work through and sculpt the hair so that it sits really nicely coming up and pointing towards the back of the ear. So as I work with this shape, I'm also hairspraying as I go along, smoothing down any flyaways and just making sure I'm happy with the overall shape and structure. So then I'm going to repeat that same process on the other side of the head. I'm bringing the hair in a barrel roll up at an angle so it joins the roll that we've already done and it meets up towards the back of the ear. So again, hairspray, smooth those flyaways, wrap around the finger, tuck the other finger inside that roll to tuck the ends in, and then sculpt and style as you kind of want the roll to sit. And then you can just see I'm pulling that roll apart slightly just so it sits nicely against the other rolls that we've done, and that kind of uniforms this roll all the way around. And then once again I'm pinning in place with a pin curl clip for now, whilst I kind of play with the shape and make sure I'm happy with the way it kind of sits and all meets together. Another reason why I'm using the pin curl clips in this section of hair on each side is to make sure it's nice and uniform, because obviously this is a really symmetrical hairdo. So now that I've done both sides, I'm going to just do any adjustments that I think are needed and then pin in place using hair grips. So as you can see, I'm going directly down into the roll just to really secure that in place and keep everything nice and tidy. And here we have our finished Silk Spectre inspired hairstyle. So it combines a few different things. We've got bumper bangs, victory rolls, and what's basically a reverse Gibson roll. So it's a really fun hairstyle, and you can also change it up so it looks like different kind of styles and take different inspirations from it.